The Roundabout Land. The children were very excited. The branch came to an end, and a little ladder ran through the cloud. Up the children went, and before they knew what had happened, there they were out in the sunshine in a new and very strange land. They stood on green grass. Above them was a blue sky, and a tune was playing somewhere, going on and on and on. Bessie said,
"It's the sort of tune a roundabout plays, isn't it?"
It was. And then, without warning, the whole land began to swing round. The children almost fell over, so suddenly did the swinging begin.
"What's happening?"
asked Bessie, frightened. The children felt ever so giddy as trees, distant houses, hills and bushes began to move round. They too felt themselves moving as the grass was going round as well. They looked for the hole in the cloud, but it had disappeared.
"The whole land is going round and round like a roundabout,"
cried Joe, shutting his eyes with giddiness.
"We've passed over the hole in the clouds. We don't know where the topmost branch of the Faraway tree is now. It's somewhere beneath this land, but goodness knows where." "How can we get back home again?"
cried Fanny.
"We'll have to ask someone for help,"
said Joe. The three began to walk away from the patch of green field in which they were standing. Bessie noticed that they'd been standing on a ring of grass that seemed darker than the grass around. She wondered why it was, but she had no time to say anything, for it really was very, very difficult to walk properly in a land that was going round and round like a roundabout all the time. The music went on and on too. Joe wondered where it came from and what the machinery was that worked the strange roundabout land. Soon they met a tall man singing loudly from a book. Joe stopped him, but he went on singing. It was annoying. Joe shouted,
"How can we get away from this land?"
"Don't interrupt me,"
sang the man, and he beat time with his finger. Joe caught hold of the bony finger and shouted again,
"Which is the way out of this land, and what land is it?"
"Now you've made me lose my time. I shall have to begin my song again,"
said the tall man crossly.
"What land is this, please?"
asked Fanny.
"It's a roundabout land, of course. I should have thought anyone could have guessed that. You can't get away from it. It goes round and round always, and only stops once in a blue moon."
Joe groaned.
"There must have been a blue moon when we climbed into it. It had certainly stopped then."
The man went off singing loudly, and Fanny said,
"Silly old diddle-derry. Honestly, we do seem to meet the most peculiar people, don't we, Bessie?"
"Yes, but what I'm worried about is getting home. Mother will be anxious if we are not back soon."
So they sat down very solemnly, hearing the roundabout music going on and watching the distant hills and trees swinging around against the sky. It was all very strange. After a while, a pair of rabbits lolloped up and looked at the children. Fanny loved animals, so she threw a bit of cake at them. To her surprise, one of the rabbits picked up the cake in its paw, nibbled it like a monkey, and spoke to them.
"Thank you. Such a change from grass. Where do you come from?"
"We are new to Roundabout Land,"
said Bessie in alarm.
"We only came to it about an hour ago. We came up the Faraway tree."
What?
cried both rabbits at once, flipping up their long ears in amazement. And the first rabbit said,
"Up the Faraway tree, did you say? Goodness, you don't mean to say that it's touching this land?"
"Yes, it is, but I expect as this land is swinging round and round that the topmost branch might be almost anywhere underneath it. There's no way of finding out."
The first rabbit said excitedly,
"Oh, yes, there is. If we burrow down a little way and make a hole, we can see whereabouts the Faraway tree is underneath. And we can wait for it to come around again when the land swings above it."
"Well, we came up here from the tree just where the grass is darker than the rest,"
said Bessie.
"I noticed that. Do you suppose that as the roundabout land swings round, it will come back to the same place again, and we could slip down on the topmost branch?"
The rabbit nodded.
"Of course you can. We can easily burrow down that green patch of grass and wait for the land to turn round just over the tree again. Come on, quickly, there's no time to lose."
The rabbits began to dig quickly. Soon they found the ladder that led upwards, and they made such a big hole that the children could see down it to the large white cloud that swirled below the roundabout land. The roundabout music went on, and then suddenly it began to slow down. The first rabbit peeped out of the hole below and gave a shout.
The land has stopped going round, and the faraway tree is just nearby, but we can't reach it. But what shall we do?
Asked Bessie.
We must get onto the tree before we swing away again.
The second rabbit put his hand into a big pocket and pulled out a yellow rope.
He's got a rope.
Said the first rabbit. And the second rabbit made a loop on one end and then threw it carefully at the topmost branch of the nearby tree. It caught and held.
Good.
Joe said.
Slide down the rope first, Fanny. I'll hold this end.
So Fanny, rather afraid, slid down the yellow rope to the tree, and then, just as she got there, the roundabout music began to play very loudly and quickly, and the roundabout land began to move.
Quick, quick!
Shouted Fanny as the land swung nearer to the faraway tree.
Jump, jump!
They jumped, and the rabbits jumped after them. The roundabout land swung off. The big white cloud covered everything. The children and the rabbits clung to the topmost branch and looked at one another. Joe called out,
We look like monkeys on a stick, but what a fantastic adventure that was.
Moonface and the Slippery Slip. Fanny was very tired. She began to cry as she clung to her branch. She was the youngest, and not so strong as Joe and Bessie.
I shall fall. I know I shall fall.
Joe and Bessie looked at one another in alarm. This was a problem, because there was such a long way to fall. Joe spoke softly.
Come on, Fanny. Be brave. We've got to get home safely.
But Fanny clung to her branch and looked very sad. The two rabbits looked at her, most upset, and one put a paw into her hand.
I'll help you. Come along. I'll help you.
But Fanny wouldn't be helped. She was tired out and afraid of everything now. Just as the others began to despair, a small door flew open in the trunk of the tree not far below, and a round moon-like face looked out and shouted,
Hey there, what's the matter? A fellow can't get any sleep at all with that awful noise going on.
Fanny stopped crying and looked at the moon-faced person in surprise.
I'm frightened of climbing down the tree. I'm sorry I woke you up.
Moonface beamed at her.
Have you any toffee?
Of course, this surprised everyone.
Toffee? What do you want toffee for?
To eat, of course. I just thought that if you had any toffee to give me, I'd let you slide down my slippery slip. You get down to the bottom very quickly that way, you know.
Joe could hardly believe his ears.
A slide all the way down the faraway tree. That's clever. Whoever would have thought of that?
Moonface beamed just like a full moon.
I thought of it. I let people use it if they pay me toffee.
The children looked at one another in dismay, for none of them had any toffee. Then Joe shook his head.
We've no toffee, but I've a bar of chocolate.
Won't do. I don't like chocolate. What about the rabbits? Haven't they got any toffee either?
The rabbits turned out their pockets. They had a very curious collection of things, but no toffee.
Sorry,
Said Moonface, and slammed his door shut. Fanny began to cry again. Joe climbed down to the door and banged on it.
Hi, old Moonface. I'll bring you some lovely homemade toffee next time I'm up the tree, if you'll let us use your slippery slip.
The door flew open again, and Moonface beamed out.
why didn't you say so before? Come in.
One by one, the rabbits and the children climbed down to the door and went in. Moonface's house in the tree was very peculiar. It was one round room, and in the middle of it was the beginning of the slippery slip that ran down the whole trunk of the tree, winding round and round like a spiral staircase. Round the top of the slide was curved furniture made to fit the roundness of the tree trunk. The children wished they had time to stay for a while, but Moonface pushed them towards the slide.
You want a cushion each. Hi, you rabbit. Take the top one and go first.
One of the rabbits took an orange cushion and set it at the top of the slide. He sat down on it, looking a little nervous.
Go on. Hurry up. You don't want to stay all night, do you?
said Moonface, giving the rabbit a hard push, and the rabbit slid down the slippery slip at a tremendous pace, his whiskers and ears blown backwards. Joe thought it looked a lovely thing to do. He went next. He took a blue cushion, sat on it at the top of the slide, and pushed off. Down he went on his cushion, his hair streaming backwards. Round and round and round went the slippery slip inside the enormous old oak tree. Joe enjoyed every second. Bessie went next. She flew down on a fat pink cushion, gasping for breath because she went so fast. Then Fanny went on a green cushion, and then the other rabbit. One by one they went down and shot out of a sort of trapdoor in the trunk at the foot, which closed itself tightly as soon as the slider had gone through. They all sat on the ground getting their breath and laughing, for it really was funny to shoot down inside a tree on a cushion. The rabbit stood up first.
We'd better be going.
So pleased to have met you.
They disappeared down the nearest burrow, and the children waved goodbye.
Oh, what a lovely way of getting down the faraway tree that was,
said Bessie, jumping to her feet.
It was so quick.
I loved it.
Said Fanny. Then Joe stood up.
Come on, we really must get home. Goodness knows what time it is.
Good idea,
said Bessie, and then they all turned to go home, thinking as they walked of the strange and exciting things that had happened that day. They came to the ditch and jumped across. By the time they reached the cottage, they were ready to drop with tiredness. They undressed and ate their supper sitting in their beds.
I'm not going up the faraway tree again,
said Fanny, lying down.
Well, I am,
said Joe.
Don't forget we promised old Moonface some homemade toffee. We can climb up to his house, give him the toffee, and slide down that slippery slip again. We don't need to go into any land at the top of the tree.
But Bessie and Fanny were fast asleep, and very soon Joe was too, dreaming of the strange faraway tree and the curious folk who lived in its enormous trunk.